Welcome, my fellow attorneys, to the National Bankruptcy Academy video series. I'm your host, Robert Schaller, an attorney with over 34 years of experience and a registered certified public accountant. Today, we'll be discussing the Statement of Financial Affairs with a line-by-line analysis with real-world commentary. I hope you enjoy the video. Every Chapter 7 debtor is required to file a statement of the debtor's financial affairs. A debtor's Statement of Financial Affairs is officially titled Official Form 107, Statement of Financial Affairs for individuals filing for bankruptcy. The form is commonly referred to as the Statement of Financial Affairs or the acronym SOFA. The Statement of Financial Affairs provides a summary of the debtor's financial history over certain periods of time before the debtor filed for bankruptcy. Debtors who are in business as a sole proprietor, partner, family farmer, or self-employed professional must provide the information about all of the debtor's business and personal financial activities. Although this statement may ask the debtor questions that are similar to some questions on the schedules, the debtor must fill out all of the form completely to protect the debtor's legal rights. Now, let's turn our attention to this bankruptcy form with a line-by-line analysis with real-world commentary. I hope you enjoy the video. Now let's take a look at the form. In the top left corner is the familiar fill in this information box that we've seen on all the other schedules and statements, asking the debtor to reveal the debtor's name, the debtor's spouse, and the United States bankruptcy court in which the debtor has filed the case, as well as the case number. So let's complete the box. Debtor 1 is George Washington. Debtor 2 is Martha Washington. They have filed the case in the Eastern District of Virginia, so let's use the pull-down menu to find it. Scroll down and find the Eastern District of Virginia. There it is, and we'll click on it. Next, we'll enter the case number, and let's assume that the case petition has already been filed, and this Statement of Financial Affairs is being filed after the case filing, so therefore a case number is available. Let's enter the case number. Over to the right is the familiar check if this is an amended filing box. So if this was an amended SOFA, then we click the box. But in this particular case of George and Martha Washington, this is the first time the document is being filed, so we'll uncheck the box. Moving down, we'll see that the official title of this form is Official Form 107, Statement of Financial Affairs for Individuals Filing for Bankruptcy. Let's read the instructions. Be as complete and accurate as possible. If two married people are filing together, both are equally responsible for supplying correct information. If more space is needed, attach a separate sheet to this form. On the top of the additional pages, write your name and case number if known. Answer every question. So let's scroll down to part 1. Let's look at line 1. It asks the question, what is your current marital status? And it's a binary answer, either married or not married. So the debtor should look at the marital status according to the state law in which they reside. In the case of George and Martha Washington, they live in Virginia, and under Virginia law, they are deemed married. So check the married box. Move to line 2. Line 2 asks the question, during the last 3 years, has the debtor lived anywhere other than where the debtor lives now? If the answer is no, then you check the no box. But in the case of George and Martha Washington, the answer is yes, they have lived somewhere else in the last 3 years. Notice the line then says, list all of the places you lived in the last 3 years. Do not include where you live now. So on this form, which is line 2 of SOFA, you would not include the debtor's residence that shows up on the petition. Now notice that line 2 has 4 columns. The first column says debtor 1. Second column says dates debtor 1 lived there. The third column says debtor 2. And the fourth column, dates debtor 2 lived there. So in the case of George and Martha Washington, they have lived in one other place, Chicago, Illinois, during the last 3 years, and they lived there together. So let's fill this out. The first one for debtor 1 is, what was the street address? And let's add it. And they have lived there from February of 2018 to October of 2019. So let's include it. Now notice on column 3, debtor 2, there's a box that says same as debtor 1. If the debtor and the debtor's spouse lived at the same address, you do not have to type in the same address again. Instead, just click the box as I'm doing here. Then over in column 4 is dates debtor 2 lived there. And if the dates are the same, you don't have to enter the same dates, but you can go ahead and click the box as I'm doing here. But if, for example, debtor 2, which is Martha Washington, had moved out temporarily and lived somewhere else, then you'd have to fill in column 3 for debtor 2 and column 4, dates debtor 2 lived there separately. But in this case of George and Martha Washington, they both lived there together, so I checked the same as debtor 1 box. Now let's scroll down to line 3. Line 3 asks the question, within the last 8 years, did a debtor live with a spouse or legal equivalent in a community, property, state, or territory? So the first issue is you have to identify the community, property, states, and territories in the United States. And they include Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Puerto Rico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. In the case of George and Martha Washington, they lived in Virginia, which is not a community property state, so they would check the box no. However, if they did live in a community property state, then they would check the box yes, with the further instruction, make sure you fill out Schedule H, your co-debtors, official form 106H. But in the case of George and Martha Washington, they do not live in a community property state, so they just check the box no and move on to question 4. So let's scroll down to question 4. Line 4 asks the question, did you have any income from employment or from operating a business during this year or the 2 previous calendar years? With further directions of fill in the total amount of income you received from all jobs and all businesses, including part-time activities. If you're filing a joint case and you have income that you received together, listed only once under debtor 1. Now the first thing to note is the time periods. It's the time period of this year and 2 previous calendar years. So what do they mean by this year? That's really a year to date. Let's assume you filed the SOFA on February 15th. Then the phrase, quote, this year, unquote, would mean January 1st to February 15th. And the phrase 2 previous calendar years would be exactly that, January 1st through December 31st of the 2 prior calendar years. So if the debtor did not receive any income from employment or operating a business, they check the box no. However, in the case of George and Martha Washington, they did receive income from employment or operating a business. So I'm going to uncheck the no box and instead check the yes box. And then it states fill in the details. Now let's go through this chart. There's really 5 columns. The first one is a date column. It says from January 1st of the current year until the date you filed for bankruptcy. The second column has debtor 1, which consists of 2 subparts, sources of income and gross income before deductions and exclusions. And then column 4 says debtor 2, sources of income and gross income. So now let's complete the first line. From January 1st of the current year until the date the debtor filed for bankruptcy, George Washington did have income, but he had no income from wages, commissions, bonuses, or tips, so this box remains unchecked. But George Washington did have income from operating a business, so we'll check the second box. Then move over to the second part of debtor 1. What was the gross income before deductions and exclusions? Now notice that they're using the word gross income. When it comes to wages and commissions and bonuses and tips, well, that's the same as your paycheck gross income, so that's easy. But when operating a business, it's important to note that on SOFA line 4, you're talking about gross income. Even though on Schedule I, you're going to be talking about net income. But here on SOFA line 4, it is the gross income. Even if there's a loss for the business, you still put the gross income before deductions and exclusions. In the case of George Washington, he made $38,500 year to date. So let's add that. Now, when it comes to Martha Washington, debtor 2, she also earned income, but she earned it from the box wages, commissions, bonuses, and tips, because she has wages by being a teacher. So check the first box. Now, the second box, operating a business, is left unchecked because Martha Washington does not operate a business. And Martha Washington's year-to-date wages is $45,000, so let's enter that. Now, let's move down to the next section. It says income from employment or operating a business for the last calendar year, and then they want you to fill out the calendar year, January 1 to December 31st of what year? And in this particular case, we're saying 2019. And that is because we're completing this SOFA during the calendar year 2020. So for the calendar year 2019, George Washington again had no wages but did operate a business. So check the second box. And the income for the entire calendar year of 2019 was $26,000. And for Martha Washington, she had wages as a teacher but did not operate a business, so the second box is not checked. And her income was $72,000. And that'd be $72,000 for the whole calendar year of 2019. Now, line 4 also requires to fill out the next line, which says the amount of income from employment or operating a business for the second full calendar year. So that'd be January 1st to December 31st of 2018. And that's assuming that this statement of financial affairs was filed in the year 2020. So it would be the year-to-date of the year in which the petition was filed, plus the 2 full years preceding that. And in the calendar year 2018, George Washington also had income, nothing from wages, but operating a business, but it was a bad year, and his gross was only $3,250. And Martha Washington, she had wages again as a teacher, but nothing is operating a business, so only the wages box is checked. And her income for the calendar year of 2018 was $70,000. Now let's scroll down to line 5. Line 5 asks the question, did the debtor receive any other income during this year, which is the year the petition was filed, or the 2 previous calendar years? So again, the dates are very important. It's the year to date in the year the petition was filed, plus 2 full years in the 2 previous calendar years before the bankruptcy petition was filed. So let's read the instructions. Line 5 instructions say, include income, regardless of whether that income is taxable. Examples of other income are alimony, child support, Social Security, unemployment, and other public benefit payments, pensions, rental income, interest, dividends, money collected from lawsuits, royalties, and gambling and lottery winnings. If you are filing a joint case and you have income that you receive together, listed only once under debtor 1. List each source and the gross income from each source separately. Do not include income that you listed in line 4. Now remember, this is gross income, not net income, gross income. So if the debtor did not receive any other income during this time frame, then check the box no. But in the case of George and Martha Washington, they did receive other income, so I'm going to uncheck the box no and check the box yes. With the further instructions, fill in the details. Now let's review this chart. This chart looks very similar to the chart on line 4. And it has the first column, which is the date column, saying from January 1st of the current year until the date you filed for bankruptcy. The second column is debtor 1, sources of income. Column 3 is gross income from each source before deductions and exclusions. The fourth column is for debtor 2, sources of income. And for column 5, gross income from each source before deductions and exclusions for debtor 2. Now, in the case of George and Martha Washington, they did have income from sources other than wages and employment. They, in fact, had taxable refunds and interest and dividends. So let's complete that. Source of income would be taxable refunds. And the gross income for the taxable refunds, $445.